The Auditor General there looking at the response to the floods in KwaZulu-Natal. Let's talk about smokes now. British American Tobacco South Africa says that nearly 70% of cigarettes consumed in South Africa are from illicit brands. This means that manufacturers cannot be policed around ingredients and they're not paying tax like registered brands. The company says this makes South Africa the largest illicit tobacco market in the world, and it's blamed the ban on cigarette sales in 2020. Let's get another view. We're joined now by the Director of the National Council Against Smoking. That's Professor Olalekan Ayo-Yusuf. Professor, thank you for being with us. So your organization obviously encourages people not to smoke cigarettes. However, the warning at the time in 2020 that an outright ban would not stop anyone smoking because it's so addictive, but people would buy more cigarettes on the black market and get used to more illicit cigarettes. Is that not what has happened in fact?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think to start with, one needs to clarify what illicit cigarettes are. Indeed, it was clear that if there was a ban, any other cigarette that you obtain at that point would be illicit cigarette. But from your question, it's clear that people are confused of what illicit is. Illicit cigarettes is either a counterfeit, that is something you have a factory and you produce something fake, or the legal cigarette that finds its way into the market without a tax. And that's exactly what constitutes illicit cigarette. So it's not any more dangerous. It's the same cigarette that is produced by the same tobacco companies that are complaining that finds its way into the market somehow by the same producers. And I think the biggest mistake the state made was to allow the companies to continue to produce cigarettes while there was a ban on sales. Yeah. So therefore, the cigarettes found their way into the same market. Yes, indeed, it worsened the situation.
I'm just trying to understand, because they often, the big brands often talk about the producers of illicit cigarettes as their enemies. You're saying they're one and the same. The frontal brands are also involved on the black market. Is that what you're saying?
Any brand that finds its way into the market without paying tax is illicit. So what usually happens, you would have people who would declare the product as going across the border. Taxes are not paid, but it finds its way back into the company. And of course, there's been allegations that the same big tobacco companies, as much as the local small companies, are all involved in this whole illicit trade. So there's really no need for any one company to talk about illicit. It was a perfect storm. We know the problem of illicit trade is linked to corruption. It's a crime. It's got nothing to do with tobacco legislation itself. Even before the ban, there was a problem of illicit. And of course, the tobacco company has overplayed the problem. There's no 70, we don't believe that 70% of cigarettes consumed in ASA are illegal or illicit. There's a big problem in the way this was actually calculated. Basically, they go to shops, and when they find a cigarette that is sold below the price that's supposed to be the excise tax, it is called illicit. But does not mean everybody is smoking that particular brand from that store. Yeah. Our estimation is that the current illicit cigarette is between 40% and 50%. It is very high. And I'm saying again, the problem is not about the regulation or taxes. It's about the crime and the criminal elements within the tobacco industry themselves. Yeah. And the state just needs to make sure that they enforce the law.
If they are being sold under the counter at garage forecourts, that's what the study found, that the number of garage forecourts selling these cigarettes has quadrupled. Certainly South Africa is missing out on a lot of tax. That must be undisputed. And I guess it makes it harder to get people to give up smoking when it's cheaper.
That's true. It does make it harder when it's cheaper. And this is the reason why the issue around the legislation and all regulations to make sure that people give up smoking should continue. That is, making sure the price of cigarettes is very expensive. However, the leakage, which is the crime, must be addressed separately. And I still say the whole problem of illicit trade, the Nugget Commission, that looked at what was happening in SARS a few years ago could clearly link that to what we have currently today as a problem of illicit cigarette. We should not conflict the two. There's the issue of making sure people stop smoking by increasing the price of cigarette and making sure there is enforcement of the law and criminals are apprehended. And that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
The fact that there's corruption in the country doesn't mean we stop making laws. Yes, there's corruption in hospitals, but we don't stop treating people. We don't stop funding the hospitals. So we should not conflict the two. Address the crime and make sure there's regulation to control tobacco use.
And in addressing the crime, I mean, how do we do that? Just clamp down harder on the people selling these cigarettes and producing them and smuggling them across the border, whatever.
We should start with the producer. We should start with the producers. The WHO has actually put out a protocol that can help countries to stem the problem. For reasons I still do not understand, the South African government has not signed to the protocol on preventing illicit trading. This allows you to track and trace from the point of manufacturing and track the machine. Once it is produced, you can actually trace the cigarette all the way to the end with stamps and all of that. But we do not have that in South Africa. And I would encourage that the government should sign up to the illicit protocol.
All right, thank you for your time tonight. Professor Olalekan Ayo-Yusuf, a National Council Against Smoking Director.